welcome to the Other Decluttering Podcast. I am Kirsty Ferrugia.
And I am Amy Revell. My husband says that every time I say that, I sing it. He said, I can tell when you're doing a podcast because I hear you kind of sing, and I am Amy Revell. And I was like, yeah, Kirsty and I sing when we talk. That's fine.
My whole conversation this morning has been about singing.
Really?
And song and how we can have, how music is so important and can situate you in time and can take you out of time, and all the things around music and singing and song and having songs that resonate with you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So anyway, that's a whole nother podcast.
It's that soul connection with songs. Like I was saying to Elijah yesterday, because he plays the didgeridoo, and I said to him, I haven't heard you play the didge in a while. And it's like when he plays the didge, I feel so connected to country. Like it's so strange because we don't
he's not
identify at all with being Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander. So I don't know, like there's something about it.
But you are Australian and you were born in Australia, and so you are situated you are situated in Australia. And so that makes sense to me because I feel the same when I hear the didgeridoo as well.
Yeah.
When I hear any form of Indigenous music, song and dance, I'm like, oh, that it gets me as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think, the conversation I was having this morning is just how out of time and space music can be. And so it can be, cool. It is like, and we feel it in places and we can, like, there's so much emotions connected to it. And so absolutely love the didge as well. And it does make me go, what a privilege it is to have been born Australian and to feel some connection to the land, even though it's a minuscule amount compared to our Indigenous brothers and sisters who are really connected to this land.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's so cool, isn't it?
Time management. Hey, we're talking about time. And now we're talking about music and how it's outside of time and space. So cool.
Well, we're talking about time management. Clearly, you've just seen Kirsten and I go off tangent. And sometimes that's just one of the little hurdles with time management is that you get distracted. And as a ADHDer, get distracted all the time. So I think this will be a really, really good episode for everyone. It's awesome if you're neurodiverse. It's awesome if you've got other things that you need to account for. Like if you've got a physical disability, you need to account for that in your time management. If you've got 6 kids versus no kids, that changes how you manage your time. So I'm excited about this episode.
Yeah. And I'm really thankful that your diverse brain can bring your lens to it as well.
Yeah, because actually in terms of my own executive functioning, time management, in terms of being on time, getting things done by a deadline, no problems at all. Using my time well can be the challenge. So time management is not just about can you get to your appointments on time, because I am never late. And Kirst, you will know to my detriment, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so there's, so many components of time management.
Yeah, because prioritizing is one of the parts of time management and executive functioning. And for you in particular, like when you say you're such a fun
go on, say it.
No, just it's fun being in business with you because you're such strong values around being a person of your word and time. So when you say to somebody, I'll get back to you by 3 o'clock, you have to get back to them by 3 o'clock because you, in your view, getting back to them at 2:03 is being disintegrous. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah. Yep. I also find from the way that my brain thinks is making, so it also goes back to the 4 tendencies of Gretchen Rubin, is if I make a commitment to somebody else I am way more likely to stick to it than if I do it myself. And so if I say to someone, I'll call you back by 3, that's also a way of managing my own time management, because I'm giving myself a hard finish. Because if I just say I'll get back to you, I then have the responsibility for that to be a self-motivated thing. I need to motivate myself to do that. Whereas if I've given my word, I don't find that difficult. I will move heaven and earth. So I find this such an interesting topic because it's so complex in my brain.
Yeah, and because in my brain, like you, and this is what happens, and this is some of the tension being in business with you, is that I have something equally important that needs your attention, and you have to drop and run to go and make that call by 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I appreciate and really value you being a woman of your word in lots of ways.
Except when it
impacts on me.
You. And I think it also depends on your life stage with time management. So, Kirsty, your time bounds are quite firm. And so time management for you doesn't have fuzzy edges. The things that need to be managed in time have, generally speaking, like it's certainly not cut and dry, but generally speaking, there are firmer edges to myself. And so how you approach time management also depends on whether you're running to schedule, whether you're schedule-based or whether you're task-based or whether you're values-based,
or people-based.
Whether you're motivated by yourself or whether you're motivated by others, whether you feel like you have a really limited amount of time or whether you have the ability to, some people, and sometimes I feel a little bit like this, Kirst, where I sometimes feel like I operate outside of time. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I do stuff, I'm like, how did I get all of that done in that amount of time? Like, I actually don't know how that works. And I feel like it's a little, superpower sometimes, but can also, be annoying, is that sometimes time doesn't make a difference. Like I can just go off in a, what's the word? Like hyper focus. Mm-hmm. And the time almost slows down. Mm-hmm. So time management in that moment is really different to time management that's reliant on other people. So when I'm hyper-focused and working solo, time genuinely feels like it slows down. I feel like, oh, wow, I got so much done, or I've got 50 things on my list and I feel confident I can get through them all. But I'm not a solo business owner. I'm not a solo operator. I've got a team, I've got a business partner, I've got family. And so I'm drawn back into the limitations of time regularly, particularly when working with others. And I think I'm understanding this more as I say it out loud right now.
Yeah. And this comes back to another conversation, same conversation that I was having this morning with somebody about time, like about music and singing and songs and music, was about time as well, and how exactly what you said, that sometimes time can stretch and seem like it's only been a minute when it's been hours. And so time is fascinating and our brains are fascinating, and we want you, dear listeners, to think about this some more too, and how it is that your unique brain works, and what is your relationship with time. Are you always running late? Are you always running out of time to get something done? Do you need to plan your days? Do you love unplanned days? Do you need to work on your prioritization? Do you need strict boundaries? Do you need, what is your relationship with your brain? What is your relationship with time? And what's your relationship with other people? I remember my sister and brother-in-law did this parenting course 17 years ago when they became parents, and they were part of this course is talking about time and how when you are late to something, you're actually robbing the other person of time.
Oh.
And it would just, and I know, dear listeners, that some of you are like, yes. And then other
I'm like
of you are
pumping,
like,
but also like aware of everyone else that's got like executive function. And they're like, easier said than done, Kirsty.
oh, 100%. And that's where, like, I, being a person who loves being on time as well, I was like, yes, at the time. And now knowing more about and having a whole lot more grace for other people than I did 17 years ago, I am realizing that that is a huge hurdle for some people to manage. And what a whole lot of shame and guilt to pile on somebody who actually is very unaware of time through no choice of their own.
And there are tools. Like one of my kids has really high anxiety if he was ever running late for something. And he doesn't ever run late because luckily for him, he's got Cal and I as parents and we don't run late. But there are also tools that you can put in place. So if I was a naturally 5-minute, 10-minute late person and that also is part of the definition. So like if you think about cultures, the saying Fiji time is that it's loose. It's time that is fluid. Whereas if you were, I've got friends who are German and time is much more finite. It's much more to the minute than a roundabout. And so I think culturally it makes a difference too. And in your family you have culture. Does your family kind of say, yeah, around about then and the door's open and there's no kind of firm boundaries? So it can be a lot about how you were brought up, where you were brought up, who you were brought up with, as well as, like you said, your own personality.
Oh, wow. I remember listening to a podcast and now I'm never going to be able to find it. So I'm sorry, dear listeners. I won't be able to point you in the right direction. But it was, I know, it was I'm pretty sure it's a Dax Shepard podcast talking to a person who studies different culture in workplaces, and they were talking about working in Germany compared to working in Japan and the different cultural and what we as Westerners think is appropriate is seen as in the opposite in different cultures and time being one of them. And I just think it's fascinating and so arrogant that our worldview we think is the worldview and is the only worldview.
This is the right and the wrong.
Yeah, whether that be Western and generalisation Western culture or whether it be Kirsty culture and the way I view the world. Yeah. Well, my view is the only view and it's the only view that matters. No.
So many of us feel like that.
Yes.
There's a great quote in Suits, the show with Meghan Markle and Harvey, more importantly, that a new lawyer arrives to the office at, I think it was like 8 o'clock. And he says, where have you been all morning? He goes, I'm on time. It's 8 o'clock. He goes, if you're not an hour early, you're late. And I really resonated with that. Like I said to Cal, oh my gosh, that's how I feel, is that if you're not early, you're late. But actually, that's not fair either. So when you have unrealistic expectations of, we say work starts at 8, but really, if you're not there an hour early, we consider you to be late. Sometimes you just got to communicate these things. Because otherwise it's just all assumptions and ripe for miscommunication.
Yes. So we aren't all born knowing how to manage our time, are we?
No. Some of us are, and some of us are really, really not.
Yeah. Do you think it's something that you can learn or grow into? Is it a 100%. Skill?
Yeah. I think it's a natural skill. I think people who are really good at it tend to find it quite natural, and the people who are not so good about it have really good scaffolding around it. So yes, I find that I'm always running 5 minutes late for a meeting at work. So actually I set my clock, or I set alarms, or I do this, or I spend the half hour before the meeting working on my laptop in the room so I don't go down a rabbit hole. And when everyone arrives, I just put my computer away. So I think the scaffolding that you put around Kirst is really important. And hopefully we can give you some scaffolding in this episode, or we can just trigger that thought of, oh, I should just have a look, listen to some podcasts around time management, or read a book, or have a look online at some tools to improve my time management, or just speak to my boss or speak to my partner and go, oh, I've just been wondering, like, how do you see my time management? I'm really keen for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, because we have this conversation sometimes. It comes up sporadically in our business with you and I, because we're different in this way around, like, how do we use our time? And is that the best way to use our time? And what are you getting done in that time? Not from a
checking in perspective,
but just like, how can we work to grow in this area?
Yeah, we're not running a small business anymore. Like, how do we be good stewards of our business?
Yeah, because I do think that, understanding how I use my time and how to use my time. Belinda writes our show notes a little, helps us prompt us. And I had to read that line like 5 times to see the difference. Understanding how I use my time and how to use my time is really important, because it definitely impacts on productivity. It helps, or like it informs my ability to be organised or disorganised. And it can really help to set realistic expectations and goals, especially when it comes to decluttering. And we talked about expectations last week in our episode, so go back and listen to that when you have time.
And something we talk about in our Head, Heart and Home course is that not all time is created equal. If you imagine you spend 3 hours binging a show that you can't believe you haven't seen before, and you're so excited because there's 4 seasons of it, and time flies, versus if you spent that same amount of time waiting in queue for a COVID test. 3 hours, the time is exactly the same. You've got the same amount of seconds and minutes, but the time doesn't feel the same, and not all time is created equal. You can be efficient with your time. You can be intentional with your time. You can be unintentional with your time intentionally, like holidays. We're like, actually, we don't have like, oh, we're going to eat lunch at 12 o'clock each day. Do you know what? When we're hungry, we'll go find food. And there's flexibility in the way that you use time. Time is, I don't want to get into any kind of like physics theorem, but time is meldable, because just by the fact that you can look around and go, that person, what do they say? Like, they call people who are so good, like you're like a superwoman, or how do you get so much done? You're so productive. It's actually about how they use time. That's the difference. And one way is not right or wrong. We're not all called to use our time in the same way.
Yeah, 100%, because spending time with somebody, a loved one who's dying, is...
That's slow time.
Priceless, and is slow, and, sitting giggling with your grandchild is priceless and escapes time.
And some things like literally require time. If you think about breastfeeding, do you remember, did you breastfeed? I can't remember.
Yes, I did.
So I breastfed both of mine, but for my eldest, I chose to, I didn't have to. I chose to pump because he couldn't latch. And so I think I did 6 months of pumping. In reflection, holy moly, girlfriend, why did nobody slap me across the face and say,
Let
what
it
are
go.
you spending your whole day doing? Anyway, that was what I chose to do at the time. And I was spending like 8 hours a day on the one task of feeding my child. Now, there could have been quicker ways, but that was the way I chose, and an invaluable way to use my time. Nobody was saying, oh my gosh, Amy, you're so inefficient with your time management. Actually, in that season of life, holding, snuggling, singing, changing, bathing, walking, feeding, that's how you use your time. And so there's seasons, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Where the time efficiency and time management is not about effectiveness or I'm trying to find the right word, but you find it for me.
But I think you're landing on this concept of how Western culture really is very time oriented and very task orientated.
Yes.
And very outcome orientated. Like, whereas other cultures aren't the same. Like you said, Fiji time. What's more important than spending time with people? And that's why you're late to the next thing, because you were busy spending time with other people. And so I think that
it's so values-based, isn't it, how we use time?
it is. And whether it be right or wrong or, and that's up to you to figure out for your own value system. But I want to question. What is it that
I don't want to question it too much.
I know, because it's challenging to you, my friend. But I do want to question, what are we really valuing when we value something done quickly and efficiently and in time?
But so, Kirsten, that's an awesome question, right?
Yep.
So I think the reason that question's important, it's because what is driving you to that? Because I'm thinking in my head, as a business, if you break it down to, say what are we selling? And we say, we're selling freedom from clutter, but actually we're selling time. Mm-hmm. We are selling our time as professional organisers. We come and give you physical time to help you make better use of your time at that moment with the decluttering and organising, to help you free up time in the future, so you're not looking for things. You can find things, you can put things away, so that you can spend time doing the things that you want to do, which is bushwalking, listening to music, holidaying, building a wall, whatever. It's all about the exchange of time in our business. So I feel like there's that, we don't want to be so focused on time, but also, having a professional organizer come alongside you is a time management tool, because you're buying time. Like they say, the only thing that you can't buy more of is time. That is rubbish. You totally can buy time. You just buy other people's time.
Yes.
You can buy time. You can't personally live more time. But of all the things you're going to put your hand to in your life, time. It's why it's not the only reason we send our kids to school, but it's an example of, I could totally homeschool, but I don't. I exchange time.
Yeah, your time for somebody else's time.
Correct. And expertise and skill and sanity and a million other things.
Yeah. And
but it's about time as well.
And and it is not just about time, because it is about the expertise. It is people, it is listening to stories. I don't value a session that I sit and listen to stories all day compared to one where I get 50 bags of rubbish and donations out of the house. Mm-hmm. I don't weigh them differently. Yeah. Some people do, and that's fine, and that's cool. You do you. Mm-hmm. I don't though. I don't weigh them differently. I don't value them differently. Because I value what my client wants out of the session.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually then about, as we said, the values and priorities, because where you spend your time is where you value and prioritize. You can't not spend any time with your children but say they're the top priority. It doesn't 100%. Mean you have to spend all your time with them.
No.
And it doesn't mean you need to spend more time than your next door neighbour or your best friend or your sister,
No.
it looks different.
Yes.
But you do, where you spend your time is showing priority. If you watch TikTok for 8 hours a day, your priority is TikTok.
Yes.
Because that's where you're putting your time.
Yeah. Yeah. These have been some really great philosophical thoughts. Let's get onto some ways that we can help people other than
what are some of those scaffolding things?
Mind-bending conversations and time-bending conversations.
Yeah.
So
what is something you do, Kirst? Let's go practical. Let's go... Yeah. What is a tool or scaffolding or however we want to frame it that you use for time management?
I definitely think that one of my skills is prioritizing and is looking at my to-do list and going, okay, what actually needs to be done today or right now and what can't wait any longer or... Yeah, so is prioritizing my to-do list really helps me. And I know that's really challenging for can be very challenging for some neurodiverse people. Mm-hmm. It can be challenging for non-neurodiverse. It can be challenging for everybody.
But it's a tool that works well for you. And it's not just a tool that you know of. It's a tool that actually has the desired effect when you use it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do look at my to-do list and look at everything on there and then value it as far as what is my priority, what is the priority of me to do today.
It's so annoying, but you're right. You aren't good at it. I say through gritted teeth.
Yes. And I challenge you to do it, and it is challenging for you, isn't it? Tell us about why prioritizing is challenging for you. I think other people will feel the same as you. So I think this can be validating for other people.
And I think I'm really only this year understanding that that's hard. And I think it is post my ADHD diagnosis that I'm learning about things and going, so when I see, so one of the scaffolding things that I use for time management is a to-do list every single day. Everything is on the to-do list. If I'm having a day where I need to feel super productive, I put things on like eat lunch, have a shower. Most times though, I can just do those things. But when I look at it, these are all the things I need to get done. How I manage the, it's not anxiety, the pressure of the to-do list is I try and I'll spend the first maybe half an hour of my day getting as many of the little annoying things off as possible. So get that list down to the important things quickly. And then I'll tackle like the hard things because I know they're going to have multi-steps and da-da-da-da-da. And what can I only do in the time that is time-bound? For instance, I work quite long days, but you'll be pleased to know I'm not making client calls at 9 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock in the morning because I need to make my client calls in business hours. And so I will look at my to-do list and make sure that I do those things. But there'll be other things that I'm like, that's important. But that I can do that at 7 o'clock at night after dinner when the kids are at basketball training. I can sit and do that. So I find it really difficult to prioritize in terms of I should do this one first and that one second. The way that I do it is around how am I going to fit all this in and then give it a red hot go.
Yeah, you take that rocks and sand and stones approach.
Correct.
Yeah.
And to the point, Kirst, where, and I may have shared this before, but I think it's worth sharing again, is when Cal and I were first married, I was so into time management and I was reading all the books and I was, it was something I took great pride in, that I wasn't a waster of time. It also meant that I never stopped, but I had no desire to. I had a list that I kept with me that had things I can do if I have a day free. And I had a list of things that took 8 hours, and then things I can do in half a day. And I had things that were 4 hours, like I can't even think what they were. But there was a whole list. Then I had it broken down to 2 hours, 1 hour, half an hour, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute. And I kept that list with me for years, so that when someone like me who's arrives at an appointment early, I would pull out the list. What's something I can do in 10 minutes? Call a friend. Okay, so I'd call a friend. What's something you can do in half an hour? Read a chapter of a book. Great, I always had a book on me. And there was this like drive to make every minute count. And I think sometimes that's the enthusiasm of youth as well, that you're like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. There is so much to do in this world. There's so many problems to solve, so many exciting things I can get involved in. How can I suck every morsel from this life that I've been given? And you literally just fill it to the gills. Thankfully, I now laugh at, 21-year-old Amy and think, oh, sweet girl. That was a lot that you carried, that you had to use every moment, or that you would be stewarding your time poorly. I definitely don't feel anything of that now. I'm very happy at the end of the day to watch some Netflix or, play on my phone or scroll Insta. Like, I'm so okay with that. But there really was this list that I carried around very proudly, and these are the things that I fill my tiny little pockets of moments with.
I don't think you've ever shared that with us before.
Really?
So, no.
Okay.
Happy to be wrong, but...
Are you glad that you didn't know that before we went into business? Hey, Kirst, here's something I prepared for you earlier.
I see glimpses of that 21-year-old Amy more than you care to admit, my friend.
I love it. Yeah. So that was one of the tools I used. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say it didn't serve me at the time. I think I've matured and I've grown and all of the things, but it was one of those things where I went, how can I do this well?
Yeah.
And also I think, Kirst, you and I grew up in the 80s and 90s where there weren't phones, there weren't, like when we went to a restaurant as a family, Mum would pack colouring in for us. Mm-hmm. And so there was a sense of there is moments of time. And even at 21, there wasn't we didn't have internet, we didn't have mobile phones. Like, you didn't have that stuff to fill those moments. Nowadays, everyone's filling those moments. They don't have a list that they keep in their pocket. They have a phone that they keep in their pocket with 1 million apps on it. Mm-hmm. And so even though listeners, you're probably laughing at 21-year-old Amy, I would question, are you doing exactly that anyway?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And was I being intentional and doing things that aligned with my values, like calling a friend? And actually how we do it now, and I include myself in this, is we mindlessly fill those moments with amusement, which, the definition of amusement is not having to think, entertainment where you don't have to think.
And there's absolutely a time and a place for that. Rest and amusement is
nothing
essential.
Wrong with those things.
Yeah. It's just whether or not that's taking up all of your time management time.
Yeah. And are you defaulting to that without it being intentional?
Yeah. So let's give you few other practical steps that you could manage your time differently. Mm-hmm. You may or may not be doing this already. And so we're just going to list them off.
Yep.
And you can pick and choose. And I really want to encourage you to see things as a practice. Just experiment. See if it works for you. Give it a red hot crack. If it doesn't work, if you've already tried it, that's fine. Or if you've tried it in a past season and it didn't work, maybe try it again, because maybe in this season that you find yourself in, it actually would work. So here's the first one is something that I have done in past seasons. I do not need to do it in this season. Mm-hmm. Is do what you can the night before. So thinking about tomorrow and planning out tomorrow Maybe that's getting breakfast ready, setting kids up with their lunch boxes already. Maybe packing their bags for them, or getting my gym gear ready the night before. And now, let me be truthful. I do this sometimes if I'm feeling anxious about the morning, or if I'm really tired and I know that I want to have 3 minutes extra laying in my bed. I will get my gym gear ready so that I don't have to think. I do think about my day. Like yesterday, I had a massive day. I had to get up out of the house by 7:30. And so I had prepped the kids the night before. And I said, kids, I am leaving home at 7:30. Your dad is not here. He's interstate. I need you guys to do you and get yourselves ready in the morning.
Awesome.
So that I can get ready as well. And what do we need to do to make that happen? And Emily said, can you ring our neighbour to see if I can go to their house instead of me having to sit at home until the bus comes? And I was like, 100% I can do that.
Yeah.
And so there are times, but it's not as full on as it has been in other seasons, where it definitely, laid out clothes the night before, or like before we go traveling, we do this. I lay out the clothes before. So when we're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to the airport, so that's one suggestion.
The next one is know the end destination and then work backwards. So you're like, it's that breaking down things into chunks, really. It's like, when do I need to, so let's separate it actually out from breaking things into smaller chunks and think about, like, I need to be at work by 9. Sometimes I like to be there 5 minutes early because actually the first meeting starts at 9. So if I need to be there by 9, what time do I need to be in the car park? Okay, actually that's like 10 to 9. Yep, okay, well, it takes me 50 minutes, so I need to leave an hour early. But I do remember that there's roadworks here. And you're just working back rather than saying, I'll just leave at the same time I always leave at. Well, what are the different factors that might come into play of how you make that decision and working backwards? My eldest son does this really well because our kids are responsible for their own after-school activities and putting them in the calendar and telling us what time we need to leave. So I'm great that you've got a basketball game in Box Hill this week. I'm not going to be the one that looks up in Google Maps, how long does it take me to get to Box Hill? What time do we need to leave? How long does your coach want you there early? That's not my job. Your kids are old enough now. That's your job. And so that is a tool that can be used, even if you're not the driver or the person getting you somewhere.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things in that is also adding buffers when you know that, like you said, if you know that there's roadworks, you can add a buffer in. If you know that you have a toddler who was up late last night and is probably going to be tired and go all floppy and you can't get them into the seat, then
do not miss those days.
No, sorry. So like adding buffers in when and if you can.
Yeah. The breakdown into smaller chunks, I don't think needs a lot of explanation. It's the stuff you're often taught in school is, yes, you've got an assignment due, but what are all the road marks on the way to getting that assignment in? A draft, a second draft, sending it in for submission to someone else to look over it. And so then knowing what those chunks are and just tackling one, or often, as we say, when it comes to the decluttering, is just do 5 minutes. Just get started. Just make it a smaller chunk so it's manageable and not overwhelming.
That leads on to not overwhelming is simplify your schedule. So is there things in your schedule or on your to-do list that are really unnecessary and that actually you don't even need to be there and that are shoulds instead of coulds? And how can you move things around to make the best use of your time? So, is there... can you be decluttering your teaspoons while the kettle is boiling? Can you be decluttering the bathroom cupboards while the kids are in the bath? Like, how can you move things around to work with you instead of against you?
And this one is a really good one, is to work out how long something actually takes you, not just how long you think it's going to take or how long somebody else allocates for you to do it in.
Yes.
So, can you quickly just pop to the shops? It'll only take you 2 minutes. Well, actually, it may not take them 2 minutes. It may take them 15 minutes. So it's just having that realistic expectations, I think, and allowing time for the realistic expectations.
And timing yourself can be super helpful, because that can be when you're like, I can't be bothered putting these clothes away. It's going to take me half an hour to put the clothes away. When actually, if you tell the kids to come and get their own clothes, actually putting your clothes away takes 5 minutes. And timing that. Or, you say you do have to put everybody's away. You think it's only going to take you half an hour. Well, actually, maybe it will take you 45 minutes, and it then makes you late for the next thing. So having a realistic expectation of what it actually takes can absolutely help you in your time management.
Yeah.
We have been speaking for so long. Thank you for your patience. We're going to just read quick reviews and then let you get on with your day.
All right. We're going to help you with your time management by finishing it up. This review is from Apple Podcasts in Denmark. So Steffi77MP gives us a 5-star review titled, I love these ladies. A huge thank you to these wonderful, kind and sincere ladies. This podcast is just amazing, with tips for everyone, not only about decluttering, but how to transform your life one step at a time to become more intentional. You always feel their warmth and heart through the podcast. They complement each other in every way, and I often find myself smiling or laughing while listening to their banter. Keep it up, ladies. I found this podcast just a few months ago and have been addicted ever since. I'm now all caught up. Oh my goodness, that's very impressive. On all your episodes. So I'm not looking forward to having to wait each week to get my fix. I'm British, but I've lived in Denmark for the last 15 years. And while some terminology can be confusing, there is so much to take away from every episode of this podcast. Love, love, love this podcast.
Speaking of terminology, we did an ad for our US market where Amy says sachets. Just letting all you US people know that a sachet is like a little packet. So like what Lemsip would come in, and so it's a little packet.
Yeah. And if you're ever confused, chuck it on our Facebook community and go, girls, what's a sachet? Girls, what's a boot of a car? Because that's always fun to see the conversation there.
Okay, and our second one is from Boston Mama, from Canada. Awesome. Love Boston and Canada. So it's titled Non-Judgmental Cheerful Advice, and it's 5-star as well from Apple Podcasts. It says, these gals are great. I appreciate their non-judgmental and cheerful advice. Well, thank you, Boston Mama in Canada, and thank you, Steffi77. Whoop, whoop. Go the year of 77. It's best year ever to be born. And speaking of time management, we love you. We thank you for listening every week, and we can't wait to be back in your ears next week.
We will see you next week. Have an amazing week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.
If you've learnt something awesome today, we'd love you to leave us a review on iTunes or Facebook so others can find our podcast too.
Don't forget you can see the show notes in your podcast app or over at our website, artofdecluttering.com.au. So if there's anything you want more info on, check it out there.
If you'd like to join our supporter community, you can do so over at patreon.com/theartofdecluttering.
We hope you have a great rest of your day
and enjoy the freedom. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture.
We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.